started. Maybe. All right. Should be recording now. Thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Victoria Kelly. I am the Senior Manager of Advancement and Strategy here at the Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas. The HLA is the lead agency in the Pinellas Continuum of Care, which everybody here, I'm pretty sure, is a member of. So thank you very much for joining the COC and for donating your time and your work time to planning the point in time count. Again, please introduce yourself in the chat. If you are feeling up to it, please go ahead and let folks know how many pit counts you've participated in. If you are a veteran pit participant or pit planning committee member, let us know. It's really important that our newbies who are super, super valuable know who the vets are so that they know who to go to for questions and things like that. Also, you can always come to me for questions. But please introduce yourself in the chat, make sure that I get that attendance. So the agenda that went out today, or that went out the other day, we do have one amendment that we have to make to it. The point in time report for 2025's PIT was presented during the COC Board of Directors meeting last Friday. This report was provisionally approved pending a couple of small updates. So unfortunately, I cannot present that information to you today, but I will have that information to present to you soon. And in case anybody would like to see a recording of the presentation, it is available on the HLA COC YouTube channel. It is the August 2nd Board of Directors meeting. But we just have that little amendment to make to the agenda. And honestly, I know that it's a busy day after the storm, so that might help get us through things a little bit faster so folks can go back to that post-storm activity that I'm sure you have going on right now. So before we really get into the 2025 point in time count, I want to do a quick review of PIT. I know I've been doing PIT, the point in time count, for 4 years now, and I feel like I know it like the back of my hand. So it's really easy to forget that other folks are new to this or might have questions that have not been answered in previous years. So just want to make sure that we have that opportunity. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can put your questions in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can send me an email. Please, every question is a good question, so go ahead and ask if you have it. All right. Sorry, trying to go to the next one. There we go. All right. So let's start with, what is PIT? We call it PIT, I like to say affectionately. It is the point in time count. And PIT provides a snapshot of people experiencing homelessness in communities across the country. Of course, it provides a snapshot of homelessness here in Pinellas County on a given night. That night is always in the last 10 days of January. Our 2025 PIT is tentatively scheduled for January 30th. During PIT, teams of trained volunteers go out into the community to survey their neighbors experiencing homelessness. And of course, we make sure that these volunteers are well trained, are in groups that have a team leader and have a survey and know what they are doing. So we aren't just sending people out there and saying, go have a conversation. We're making sure that people are well organized when they go out there to collect this data. Why do we do PIT though? Because, well, one, it helps us get really, really important, valuable data. Two, because HUD tells us to. The US Department of Housing and Urban Development requires point in time counts done at least every other year in communities all across the country. In Pinellas County, we traditionally do our point in time count every single year. We do that for a lot of different reasons. One, newer data is better data, it's more actionable data. Two, it helps our municipal partners, our funders, our providers system plan better. It helps the entire COC system plan better. It makes us eligible for a little bit more funding. When we do the point in time count, This helps us secure millions of dollars in funding for vital resources. Participation in PIT as a community helps ensure we are eligible for HUD Notice of Funding Opportunity funding, HUD NOFO funding, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Last year, this funding was over $6 million. I think it was $6.1 million that our community received last year for programs like permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, and system-wide efforts. So this is a really, really important effort. Also, this informs public policy. If you hear somebody in DC or Tallahassee talk about homelessness in Pinellas County, they get that information from this event that you are help planning and that your teams and your volunteers will go out and participate in. It guides local system planning, local resource allocation, local funding requests, local advocacy efforts, national advocacy efforts. Because we do the point in time count, we know that based on 2023 point in time data, we have in Pinellas County the second highest rate of family homelessness for mostly urban communities across the country. We also have the fifth highest rate of homelessness overall and the highest rate of veteran homelessness for communities within our category. And that's compared to communities all across the country. And we know that because of this data. It is so important and so valuable. And in case anybody's curious, that's the HUD's annual homeless assessment report to Congress is where you can really find that information. And I can make sure that we send that in the chat. Um, so what happens during the point in time count? During PIT, our volunteers are trained in early January. And then when we have the event, again, tentatively scheduled for January 30th, teams of our trained volunteers go out into areas all across the county that our deployment subcommittee has specifically identified. So, Grand Central for PSTA, places like that, all across the county. And these teams survey their neighbors experiencing homelessness. Our survey development subcommittee will work on updating and enhancing that survey for this year. And our survey respondents are thanked for every survey they participate in. Traditionally, we have done a one-day bus pass for this. And volunteer shifts are 3 hours long. So volunteers really only have to commit 4 hours, 1 hour for training and 3 hours for the event, maybe an extra hour for traffic and stuff like that. So this is at most, if you do one shift, at most like a 5 hour, 4 to 5 hour commitment. And it helps bring in millions for our community and makes a really, really big difference here in Pinellas County. For volunteer shifts, as of right now, if our date and time for PIT stays the same, our volunteer shifts are 3 hours long and they begin at 6 a.m. and end at 7 p.m. Do we have any questions about what the point in time count is, why we do it, or of course, we'll go into some more specifics throughout this process, but any questions about what PIT looks like? All right. If you do have questions, please make sure that you ask them. I know that was a really long, awkward pause. To be honest, I did that intentionally. After years of leading PIT training sessions, I wanted to highlight that that is one of the important parts that our trainers will do in each session is pause awkwardly while you wait for questions. So it's a joy to look forward to. So let's move forward into establishing the PIT committee. Um, so first and foremost, a couple of just little things. To be a voting PIT committee member, your organization or you as an individual must be valid COC members. So please go ahead and update your or your organization's COC if you have not joined or renewed since January 1st. There's a QR code on the screen there, and you can also go to pinellashomeless.org/PinellasCOC to do that. We do now have scholarships and sliding fee scales available for our COC members as well. We will make decisions in this committee by group consensus. We will make decisions by vote. And to do that, we will need 51% of voting committee members in attendance in order to take action. If we do not have quorum, we will have discussions, but we will not be able to take any formal action. And formal action, which might be establishing a meeting date or something like that, may have to be deferred to the next meeting, or the decision will be put into the committee chair's hands. Of course, with recommendations from the group discussion. Our committee meetings right now, we are tentatively scheduled for the first Tuesday, August through January from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. This schedule was identified by the 2024 PIT Planning Committee. We decided back in February that this is when we would host PIT meetings for the 2025 committee. But since this is a new committee and there are new members, we wanted to make sure that you have the opportunity to weigh in on that. So this is an opportunity to, if those dates don't work, change those dates. There is a full listing, a full breakdown of the individual meeting dates in the meeting packet. But again, it is the first Tuesday of every month, August through January. And then in February, we'll do the second Tuesday of the month. And that will be our wrap up celebration debrief meeting. Also, we have the opportunity to decide if we want to allow in-person or virtual participation for quorum. The COC board is trying to move away from hybrid meetings. So I am asking that this committee decide if we would like these meetings to take place entirely virtual or entirely in person. We will still stream the meetings. If they are in person, we will still stream them on Zoom, but you would not count towards quorum if they were in person. If you were online, you would not count towards quorum and you would not be able to participate. It would just be listening in on Zoom that way. If we do meet in person right now, we have Allendale United Methodist Church in St. Pete blocked, but there are other locations available in other parts of the county as well, and I am open to that suggestion. So with that being said, I am going to be quiet. Actually, I'm going to answer one question real quick because I did see a question in the chat.
I was going to tell you there was a question in the chat. Sorry, Victoria.
You're good. Thank you so much, Daisy. So the question is, does the individual on the committee need to be a member, need to be a member if the agency is a part of it? Thank you so much for asking, Megan. If you are if your organization is a member, you don't need to be an individual COC member. You are covered by your organization's membership. Please just make sure that your organization knows you are participating in this. For instance, if you are here representing the city of St. Petersburg, please make sure that not only and I say this, the city of St. Pete has participated in this for years, and I'm sure it doesn't need to go through this process. But as an example, if you're here from the city of St. Pete, please make sure that your boss knows and that their boss knows so that it can get back to our primary member, which is Council Member Deborah Fig-Sanders. She is vice chair of the COC. So you are absolutely welcome to represent your organization and you are welcome to vote. Just make sure, please, that your organization knows you are here representing them. Very good question. Thank you very much for asking. And please keep those questions coming. As you've just seen, my boss here, Daisy, she will let us know in case I miss any of those questions in the chat. So thank you, Daisy. So with all of that being said, we don't have a formal membership for this yet. So we are going to make votes today by consensus. And I'm going to ask if anybody has, first and foremost, any thoughts on whether we meet virtually or in person. Please feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, or put something in the chat.
I would definitely recommend that we do either all in person or all virtual, for sure. It's too hard to hear people when it's hybrid.
Excellent. Thank you,
I
Era.
agree. I agree with Arrow. I think it's either one or the other. I know that when we are in person, we have a lot of dialogue happening and it's a little bit easier to listen. Um, I don't mind going in person, so that would be my vote to do in person.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
Sarah?
Victoria, this is Sarah from Catholic Charities. Um, I was gonna say something similar, but I might ruffle feathers. If there's a way to do sort of not hybrid, as in like not some of us on Zoom, some of us in person, I'm not a fan of that because they both are right. It's very difficult to hear slash interact. However, my thought is maybe doing like quarterly meetings in person and then some Zoom options kind of a thing. Um, I know I'm being selfish in this moment because I'm across the bridge in Hillsborough and I come over to Pinellas for all of this, which is fine. I can make that work, but it does make it easier to have Zoom sometimes and then in person because I do think we all talk more and interact more when we're in person, but that might be a lot to fit in an hour and a half and travel and things for everybody. Also, I know last year we kind of struggled with location being like sort of centralized for everyone because they're coming from all over the county, so on and so forth. So it just might be something to think about, maybe doing both. But I don't love hybrid where we're, in the room, but also a Zoom link because that seems to be a little kerfufflery. I know that's a made up word, but you know what I'm saying.
I like it. I think that that should be the committee's new word. Not that not that that's our goal, but I like it. Thank you, Sarah.
Victoria, maybe we could do Zoom in the initial months, right? And as we get closer, do the last 2 months maybe in person.
Okay. I think that
Just think I'm looking, we have almost 40 people on now, which is a good attendance.
We will
But
not
maybe
have 40 if we do it in person.
no, and it covers
Like-
such a broad area throughout the county too, so it makes it tricky. But I definitely think we got to make sure to figure out how to encourage people to unmute and participate in conversation for sure.
I like the idea that Dama presented, and others have mentioned too, that we can do both. As we get closer, we can start doing more in person. And if we are doing fully virtual for a couple of the meetings, obviously we would have the presenter and then the facilitator looking at the chat and making sure that if you raise your hand on virtual, that you're called upon. So we'll have a little bit more order when it comes to the virtual session. So we'll have definitely two people on the HLA side to be able to help with that process and get those questions answered.
So this is Helen, and I guess I would ask, are we talking about the subcommittees as well?
that is a great question, Helen. Subcommittees are welcome to meet in person or virtual. Subcommittees are not tied to this committee decision.
Okay, well then that be the case, then this whole committee doesn't meet that often. Once things get going, it's really more of an update because the subcommittees are meeting more often, if I remember correctly, in the years that I've been doing this. And so if that's the case, then we're talking about a small amount of meetings in person. And I am okay with whatever the bigger group decides, but I would say that in person just seems to get more done, and online it's not that we don't, but I mean, I just finished a whole presentation while you all are talking because I happen to know what you're going to say, Victoria, because I've done this for so long. That doesn't mean that I didn't hear, obviously, but it just means that you can get sidetracked with a lot of things online, and it doesn't allow for a lot of people to I mean, the majority of people on here have their cameras off. It's just not as engaging as it is in person, where people are actually engaged in the meeting. This is what we're here for. We're here to do this and make sure that this gets done right, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I
Thank
have
you
a
very much.
question for everybody. If we did do it more in person too, does it make sense to bump it up closer to the beginning or end of a day so that it's, someone's commuting directly to it or leaving right after versus getting to work for an hour, trying to get settled, then leave, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe we shift it earlier or later.
I do like that idea, Arrow. And Allendale is like right around the corner for me, but by the time I get here, set my stuff down, it's like, oh, I gotta grab something and run to the car and drive there. So if it's one or the other, that probably would work better for a lot of people. And those that have to commute, maybe they just come straight to the meeting. I don't know how their job is set up, but that might be an opportunity to come straight to the meeting.
Great.
Yes, I totally agree with my manager to either bump it up in the morning or to move it back later in the day.
I think that's a great idea.
All right.
But I agree with my manager.
I also really liked that. That is excellent feedback. Sorry, I told you I'm starting to get sick. All right, so that is great feedback. So what I'm going to do is, if we are ready, I'm going to do a little Zoom poll, and that way we can get a true vote of the majority. I think that there have been some really, really excellent points made here, and I just want to make sure that we have true consensus. So let me go ahead and save this. Sorry, I was typing it out as we were talking, so I wanted to make sure I had all of the right options in there. And let me go ahead and launch this. And if everybody could take a moment, please, to weigh in. On that note, if you are here and this is your first time participating in PIT, want to make sure that you continue to participate. But if you don't feel like you want to participate in future, please don't worry about voting. Want to make sure that we are taking into account everybody who wants to be involved, which I hope is everybody here.
Would 9 o'clock be the earliest we can do like an 8:30 at least or something? I'm just thinking it's still probably
I
touchy
would
about that, but
I would have to check in if we're in person. I would just have to check in with each location. I know each location is available at 9, but if we wanted to do earlier than that, I would just have to reach out to, if we're doing in person, the location.
I'm with you, Arrow. I'm conflicted because I would prefer the early morning, but 3 to 4:30 looks like, that would be like, oh, okay, I'd go there.
Yeah, I just picked the 9 o'clock, just thinking maybe it could be the earliest, but then you're right. I think I would rather do the afternoon if it's the end of the day.
I'm either beginning or end works better because either I can start my day or finish my day.
That makes sense. All
I
right.
agree.
Gonna give everybody just a few more seconds, so please go ahead and vote if you have not already.
Where are the locations other than Allendale? I saw that Kip said their location would be an option in ICOT, which is kind of just over the bridge. We're in Largo. I'm sure I would have to check, but I'm sure our boardroom would be available. Largo's a little farther in for some people. I know there is no central location in Pinellas County, really.
We're a very long county. Yeah, so the location would be TBD. We would just, once we decide if we want to do in-person meetings, I will get a consensus of geographically where everybody would like to be, and then figure out the specific location from there. 211, where Kip is a great meeting location. So thank you very much for offering that, Kip. And thank you as well, Megan, for looking into your boardroom. I appreciate that. All right. So it looks like 34 people have responded, and the majority, 59%, would like to do, let me end the poll and then I can maybe share the results with you. Yeah, everybody can see them now. Okay, so 59% of folks have voted to do virtual meetings August through November, and January and February. We will meet in person for our pre-pit meeting and then our debrief. And then we were really, really torn on the 9 a.m. to 10:30 or the 3 to 4:30, but it does look like the 9 a.m. to 10:30s have it. I did hear a couple of people maybe change their mind though between morning and afternoon. So before we lock in morning,
I was close.
are there people who want to relaunch the time poll?
I would like you to relaunch the time poll.
Okay.
Yes, relaunch.
Okay, let me go ahead. Let me make a new one real quick and we will get that going again. And Arrow, did we want to add 8:30 in case that's an option?
I would think so, yeah, just because 9's kind of in that same boat still.
Okay. 8:30 to 10, 9 a.m. to, oh, that's not how you write times. It's a fun way to do decisions. I've never really used polls like this in committees, and I gotta say, I like it. All right, give me just a moment and I will launch that again. And all right. Give everybody a minute there. Oh, wow, I see opinions have changed. All right, 24 people have responded. Give everybody another minute. All right, another 10 seconds if you want to respond to this one. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll now. And I'm going to share results. And it looks like we will be meeting in the afternoon, y'all. 52% of folks have opted to meet from 3 to 4:30 p.m. And we will be meeting virtually, except for January and February. So 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. virtually, except for January and February. Then it will be 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. in person. And I tell you what, we can decide the January and February meeting locations today, or we can defer that and we can do an email poll at a later date. If there's anybody who has any thoughts about the meeting location for January and February, please feel free to drop it in the chat or come off mute now. All right, I'll go ahead and we'll get that into an email poll at a later date, and we'll decide that down the line. Thank you all very, very much. We will update our calendar invitations and make sure that we send that out. Oh, action required. We took that action. Okay, so now let's talk about committee leadership. So in our committee, we have, per the COC charter, a committee chair who leads the meetings, sets agendas, and really is the driver of the point in time count. We also have a vice chair who assists the chair as needed. That may mean stepping in to lead sections of the agenda, or if the chair is absent, leading the entire meeting. And then also optionally, a secretary who helps take notes and record attendance, and then also, of course, steps in to help the chair and vice chair as needed. Our responsibilities as a committee. We plan and execute the point in time and the youth point in time events. So we plan an event for the entire pit survey, but we also have a subcommittee that works specifically on an event for youths, and that's anybody under the age of 24. And the youth pit committee has really grown in their activities over the last few years, and I'm excited to see what comes out of this year. Our committee is also responsible for creating or updating our annual PIT survey. We have been using some version of this survey for a very long time in Pinellas County, and every year it goes through review and update. Last year, the committee really focused on clarifying some questions, and then we added some questions about if folks had been arrested within the last 12 months and if folks are currently pregnant, to make sure that we are getting more data. We also market the point in time count. In 2023, we started a marketing subcommittee that Reagan with Feeding Pinellas has chaired for a couple of years. Sam Goodfellow on here has been an important part of that committee, making lots of flyers. If you've seen a PIT flyer over the last couple of years, that was created by Sam. Thank you very much. But marketing PIT to our partners, to our volunteers, to the community to make sure folks are aware of it. And then, of course, recruiting partners and volunteers. Last year, 396 volunteers were deployed for PIT. 396. That is, as far as I know, a record. The year before, we did 368. So to everybody who helped make that happen last year, congratulations. The more volunteers that we have participating in PIT, the more of the county we can cover. So it's really important that we have as many volunteers on hand as possible. We're also responsible for training and scheduling volunteers. Don't worry, this committee doesn't actually have to schedule volunteers, but the deployment committee or the deployment subcommittee does have to decide or give an idea of where volunteers should be going and look into and consider, is this going to be a high traffic time? Do we need extra volunteers at this time? Or are we okay with just a few volunteers here at this time? And then my team will go ahead and take care of the actual scheduling, so don't worry about that. We coordinate the digital survey. We started using an app for PIT surveys back in 2022, and we used Outreach Grid for a couple of years, and then we used ArcGIS Survey 123 last year. Our committee helps ensure data quality. We do that by, reviewing these surveys and by really seriously considering what data is important, how we are going to go out there, how we are going to complete these surveys, and ensuring a strong, consistent methodology. And then, of course, we evaluate PIT counts year after year so that we can make sure we're doing all that other stuff. Okay. Sorry, we had a question in the chat. Just to clarify, the August through December meeting is on the first Tuesday in the afternoon. January 1st Tuesday and February is second Tuesday. And then January and February are in person. Yes, Colette. So I'll go ahead and I'll put that in the chat and then we'll make sure that we get that updated out to everybody. But August through November, first Tuesday virtual. And then January, first Tuesday in person. February, second Tuesday in person. Thank you very much. And then we are doing 3 o'clock p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Okay. Thank you very much. Keep the questions rolling. Our subcommittees. So we have this big committee, and like you've heard a couple of our experienced committee members say, this committee meets regularly, but we also have subcommittees that meet. And that is where a lot of the work for this project, for this event happens. So we have the survey development subcommittee, the deployment subcommittee, the marketing subcommittee, the training subcommittee, and the youth subcommittee. The survey development subcommittee is responsible, and please pay attention to this because I'm going to ask you what survey or what subcommittee you want to be a part of. The survey development subcommittee creates the PIT survey. So review last year's survey, evaluate it, and update it. Ensure HUD compliance. HUD in probably October, maybe November, will give us any updates that they have to the PIT survey. So we want to make sure that we include those in the survey. And we want to make sure that any questions we add are allowable. They probably are, but we want to make sure. We also, this survey development subcommittee is responsible for translating the survey. In 2023, we were able to translate the survey into Spanish. Unfortunately, that was not part of our 2024 survey. So I'm hopeful that the 2025 PIT survey will also be translated and available in at least 2 languages. And then, of course, working to help create that digital survey. Don't worry, we're not asking anybody on this team to code, just to kind of be involved in that process, beta testing, that kind of thing. Our deployment subcommittee. This subcommittee has been chaired by Miss Dama Kelly for, I think, longer than I've been part of it. So thank you, Dama. And our deployment subcommittee evaluates our survey locations. So looking at maps from previous years and talking to providers, to street outreach workers, and trying to identify new areas. Setting those survey deployment zones, creating the survey map, identifying hot spots and inclement weather alternatives. I think that we've seen more than once. If it's rainy, folks are not going to be hanging out in the middle of the park. If it's really, really sunny, that's where you're going to find people. Last year, it was such gorgeous weather and folks were outside. So our folks in the park were very, very busy last year. And our folks doing some of the more indoor areas, some of the more isolated areas, of course, nobody's sent to an isolated area. They were a little less busy. So this deployment subcommittee is responsible for identifying high traffic areas and weather alternatives. So if it's rainy, Williams Park is not going to be the place. Instead, go over here because they're doing a meal service and that kind of thing. And then, of course, helping plan that volunteer schedule. So again, identifying how many volunteers we might need in an area, but not specifically scheduling those volunteers. And yes, Colette's right. Lealman Park did a great job last year. They had an amazing PIT event, the Florida Dream Center in Lealman last year. It was really, really well attended. Our marketing subcommittee, like I said, Reagan with Feeding Pinellas has chaired this for the last couple of years and has done a great job. Her team has done a great job helping create materials to recruit volunteers to make sure that the community is aware of this event. But of course, we always want to enhance the PIT year after year. So this year, we want to make sure that we have extra materials available, maybe materials in multiple languages. You know, we want to make sure that our partners are aware that this event is going on, that schools are aware that this event is going on, the community centers are aware and are advertising this event, and that this is shared really widely on social media and places like that. Also, this group is, of course, responsible for generating community support through those efforts. Don't worry, marketing subcommittee, you don't have to do any interviews or anything like that. Our team can take care of that. Daisy, who's on the line here, she can take care of that. Some of you might have seen me at Bowley last year doing some interviews. Don't worry, we're not throwing anybody on camera, but we are asking you to help make sure people want us to be on camera and want to talk about this event. And then the training subcommittee. I have chaired the training subcommittee for the last few years. I'm hoping that a committee member will step in and chair this group this year. This subcommittee is responsible for creating or updating our training curriculum. Every single volunteer gets trained. I think we trained something like 450 volunteers last year. It was so many, which is wonderful. But it's really important to make sure that every single volunteer has that training, knows what they are doing, and feels confident when they go out and start surveying people. And then, of course, this committee will help recruit trainers. It's not on just the subcommittee to do trainings. I think we held probably too many training sessions last year. We'll scale those back a little this year. But if we're doing 25 training sessions and each session has 2 trainers, that's a lot of training. So committee members, be ready to help out. We'll do virtual trainings. We'll do in-person trainings. We will not do hybrid trainings. That is not a thing. Do not worry. Of course, we want to make sure that those are well set up and that everybody knows what they're doing. And then last but not least, we have the Youth PIT subcommittee. April White with the city of St. Pete was generous enough to chair this subcommittee for us last year. And like I said, this subcommittee has really grown over the last few years, and the events that this subcommittee puts on have grown over the last few years. So we do separate pit events for anybody under the age of 24. Anybody who is in this field knows that that is a different population and is sometimes harder to reach. So it's really important to have spaces where youth can feel safe and seen and complete their survey. So what we've done for the last couple of years are drop-in sites with a lot of different resources available. I think that the subcommittee has made kind of a push to make it a more fun event and less of a come do a survey and get some resources kind of event. We also do some phone surveys for youth. We do those with folks that Family Resources and Ready for Life have pre-existing knowledge of per HUD standards. So that is this subcommittee. And of course, we use the exact same survey. There is no youth pit survey. It is the exact same survey. So that's a little bit about the subcommittees. All of that being said, now is time to establish leadership, and that will be leadership for the committee and for the subcommittees. And the subcommittees will start meeting as soon as next month. So I don't believe had pit committee chairs for many years, but for 2023's pit planning committee, Errol Woodard with the city of Largo really generously stepped up and stepped into that new position and chaired our committee rather brilliantly, I must say. And then in 2024, Dominique Randall with Pinellas County Human Services, who also used to be a member of our HLA team, stepped in and chaired the pit planning committee. Thank you very much, Dominique. Dominique did a really fantastic job and was instrumental in organizing our digital survey, as well as so many other things. So with that being said, thank you very much, Arrow and Dominique, for your service. I won't put you on the spot to serve again this year, but if you want to, you're welcome to. That being said, are there any nominations? And you can self-nominate or you can nominate another person. Do that person a favor though and let them know you're going to nominate them. Send them a little private message. But do we have any nominations for pit committee chair for 2025? Should we start a little easier? Do we have any nominations for vice chair? And as a reminder, our chair is responsible for leading the meetings so that y'all hear a little bit less of me and setting the agendas. And our vice chair is responsible for supporting those efforts. All right, committee members, I'm going to reach out to a couple of people individually, and then we will address this at our next meeting. If you have questions about serving in pit leadership, please let me know. And we will get that established at our next meeting. Let's move on to subcommittees. Subcommittees a little bit easier to fill in. So do we have any questions about our subcommittees? Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Dominique. I
Go
had
right
a
ahead, Dominique.
question.
Absolutely.
I apologize. I had another meeting, so I'm running late. We discussed last year at our after action meeting kind of how effective the youth pit was and maybe pivoting some of those efforts. So I didn't know, you might have already covered it. I've only been on for about 5 minutes. I was just wondering that because of that subcommittee.
Sorry. Sorry for my cough. Thank you very much for asking, Dominique. I can see you have a cough too. Thank you very much for asking and for being here, Dominique, and for all of your service for PIT over these last several years. So I would ask that the youth PIT for this year really kind of get together and solidify and continue that conversation and solidify what they want to happen. So we can, my thought process, and I'm absolutely open if the committee wants to go another direction. My thought process for Youth Pit this year was that the group would get together and decide if we want to host individual events like we've done the last couple of years, or if, kind of like we discussed last year, we want to roll that out. And then I would hope that that subcommittee could kind of decide what that looks like and then start working with other subcommittees from there. That is my vision and my thought, but I am absolutely open if this committee thinks that there is a better way to do that. I don't know all things. Any thoughts, questions, or ideas about
I
that?
think April is on here, and April, you've been doing Youth Pit for several years and chaired it last year, so I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Kind of like what Dominique said, like the last conversation was that pivoting, so that would still be my stance. Because last year, I believe we only got like maybe 3 or 4 people all together from both youth pit sites, and the year before it wasn't really that much either. So definitely, I would say trying to figure something else out would be a better option.
And I wasn't able to review the minutes from from the end of year. Obviously a little busy the past couple days. But I thought we were talking about maybe this group would also potentially pivot to those kind of what Dream Center did, where we have these kind of events. But I don't remember again what the minutes, how the outcome of that was.
Yes, Dominique, that is absolutely one of the things that we discussed in the February meeting, is if we want this to be a single day event where people just go out and do surveys like we've done in the past, or if we want to start doing more drop-in sites, if we want to extend this to multiple days. There were a lot of things that came up at the end of last year I say the end of last year, it was February, in our debrief meeting, that we really need to kind of figure out and finalize here in this committee this year. There was a definite push for enhancing and kind of changing how we do pit a little bit. And I'm excited about that. I think that there is a lot of room for us to grow as a committee and as a COC here. Great questions, everybody. So Colette has asked in the chat, does the youth pit team connect with the heat team at the local schools? Absolutely, Colette. We try and make sure that somebody from heat is on the youth pit committee in previous years. And if that is not possible, that they do coordinate with Pinellas County schools to make sure that that information is shared. So that being said, let's pause the conversation about subcommittee leadership and ask for the youth pit if we are talking about, like we had talked about kind of last year, changing up how youth pit is done. Do we want to rename the youth pit subcommittee to a youth marketing subcommittee so that we are ensuring there are specific efforts to draw in our youth?
I'd 100% support that. I was going to say that I think we're really missing the social media portion with the youth, right? And if there is a way to create a very strong campaign for that, and to start driving that early to kind of point youth in the right direction, you know, people sharing that information over and over on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you for that feedback. Anybody else have any feedback there?
I was thinking like, yeah, like youth outreach or something, but which may be more
Would it be
kind of planning for that day too, you know, like what area, if there's specific areas to send folks specific more to the youth first, and also the marketing component.
is it logistically possible for youth to be able to fill out the survey online?
We have to do it in person with them. We can't direct people to a website, unfortunately. We also can't do like a call center. What we can do is people we have pre-existing knowledge of, we can do phone interviews with them. So that is why Family Resources and Ready for Life go down their client list and do phone surveys with them during PIT and then the day after as well.
I wonder, do we have anyone from the like school heat team that's on this?
Certainly invited. Miss Erica, are you here by chance?
There was a question too, Victoria, on the chat regarding does the youth PIT
That's what I
team
was
connect with the heat team at the local schools?
Yes, and we do. We absolutely do. And could the counselors at the school do the surveys in the school? That's a great suggestion, Colette. There's absolutely no reason they could not. Kind of similarly, the VA, Blossom had somebody at the VA stationed doing surveys with walk-ins last year. And we've talked previously about partnering with our library partners to do kind of a similar thing. So when people walk into the libraries, there is somebody there to do a survey with them. So great question, great point, great idea. Do you have any other thoughts on the youth pit? Okay. We can give this a little more time. We can figure this out in future, but I am going to go ahead and put another poll out there for everybody so that we can hopefully figure out the real direction that we want to go for Youth Pit this year here in this 2025 committee. So there's another poll in front of you. Do we want the Youth Pit subcommittee to focus on youth outreach? So that's marketing and deployment, youth marketing, or maintain the Youth Pit subcommittee so there is a separate youth event as there have been in previous years. And then of course, you can also abstain, which means you're just not voting. Okay. Give everybody another like 30 seconds or so here. And Colette, when you say you think it would give better access to the kids, you mean the counselors at the school? I think so as well.
Victoria, while we're waiting for that, I just worry about, we feel that parents fill that form out when kids go back in October, but we need to make sure we're not looking for McKinney-Vento kiddos. And so I'm not sure that counselors, I think it will require some training for them as well. And then quite frankly, my kiddos are grown, but if you pulled my kiddo down to ask them any additional questions, I'd have some real heartburn about that.
That is a great point, Helen. Thank you for bringing that up. I may give myself away. I'm not a parent, and sometimes these things do not occur to me. So thank you very much for being that voice, Helen. And that is absolutely done a conversation we should continue having so that we can figure out exactly where it's appropriate to have people stationed. Because I do think that some stationed folks, no matter what we do, are a really good idea. So thank you, Colette, for the idea, and thank you, Helen, for the feedback. I think that's all really valuable. All right, so I'm going to end this poll and share the results. And it looks like we are moving to a youth outreach subcommittee. So this subcommittee will be responsible for planning marketing and deployment efforts for youth. So this subcommittee will now work super closely with the deployment subcommittee and the marketing subcommittee to make sure that we are spreading the word and ensuring that kids and youth participate in the 2025 PIT. Thank you all very much for participating in that. Gotta close it out there. There we go. And thank you everybody for continuing that conversation about counselors. I think that it's a really, really valuable conversation to have. So thank you. All right. So for our other subcommittees, our survey development subcommittee, this group is responsible for evaluating last year's survey and then enhancing it for 2025. That might mean leaving it the same as last year, but that'll probably mean making it a little bit better than last year. Because again, that's the goal every year, to make everything a little bit better. And again, also this group will be responsible for translating the survey. So to be chair, you don't have to be able to translate, don't worry. Are there any nominations for survey development subcommittee chair? Trying not to put anybody on the spot.
You're on survey development?
Survey development, yes, ma'am.
I'm comfortable being on that committee at least.
Okay. Thank you, Arrow. All right, let's try, I think, maybe an easier one. Deployment subcommittee. So identifying the areas where our volunteers should be deployed to, or the areas where we should be hosting drop-in events as we decide what the 2025 PIT will look like. And Colette, thank you very much for offering to help with the survey development subcommittee as well. I appreciate that. Do we have any past deployment subcommittee members or chairs who would like to step into that role again this year?
Victoria, I was just going to say, I think at least if we can find out who is willing to serve on the different committees, and then maybe amongst themselves, they can bring a chair forward at the next meeting. And usually for deployment, we at minimum have somebody from each of the deployment sites, right, on that?
Yes, yes, okay. Absolutely. And great suggestion, Dominique. Arrow. Dominique just said in the chat, thank you again. Dominique is willing to chair the committee and the survey development subcommittee again. So I will take that nomination. Do we have any seconds to vote Dominique Randall with Pinellas County Human Services as PIT committee chair and survey development subcommittee chair?
I second.
All right, we have a second. Do we have all those in favor say aye or don't say anything?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye. See, now there's people in the meeting. Okay.
Dominique's getting everybody active.
It's crushing me. It's soul crushing. But no, people were private messaging me. I was trying to let it ride for a little bit.
Can't.
But I would love some other people to volunteer like I just did, and then we can get this meeting going. Some other previous people, I sent you messages in the chat you haven't seen, so make sure you check your messages if you were a subcommittee person before.
Madam Chair, already doing the work. Awesome. Thank you so much. All those opposed to Dominique serving as chair and subcommittee, and survey development subcommittee chair, say nay or put nay in the chat. Hearing no nays, the motion carries. Congratulations, Madam Chair.
Victoria, I'll do the deployment if nobody else wants to do it.
Thank you.
Dama.
Thank you, Dama. I appreciate you. All right. Do we have all those in favor of Dama Kelly with Boley Centers chairing the deployment subcommittee? Say aye or nothing.
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. All those opposed, please say nay or type nay in the chat.
I would also, I feel like deployment is actually a very heavy committee. So if there's someone else, maybe from North County, familiar with North County locations, that would be willing to like sub or vice or co or whatever word we want to use.
I'd like to be on, I'd like to at least be on the committee.
There we go. All right.
Yeah.
I'd like
Excellent.
to nominate you as vice chair.
Oh, Dave.
We have a
Really?
motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. Michelle, are you willing to accept that nomination?
I am. Oh my God.
All
Yes,
right.
I am. Thanks,
All,
Dana.
all those in favor of Michelle Hansen with Directions for Living serving as the Deployment Subcommittee Vice Chair, say aye or stay quiet.
Aye.
Hi.
Excellent. All those opposed, say nay or say nay in the chat. Hearing and seeing no nays, congratulations, Madam Vice Chair, on your Deployment Subcommittee appointment. Excellent. Thank you guys. Dominique, thanks for getting this ball rolling. and
Had to break the seal. Okay, so now we got training. I don't know if this one's going to work out as well, but training. Anybody want to be a chair for training? We can
Hey,
still
it's
make.
Sarah. I don't
Oh.
want to be the chair, but I do want to be on the committee.
thank you, Sarah. And thank you,
Same,
April,
this
for
is
volunteering to
April.
serve as
I
well.
don't want to do chair, but I do want to be on the committee for training.
Thank you.
And I will be a trainer.
Yes, same. I'll be a trainer as well.
I appreciate you all supporting the training effort. I will be asking about this for a little while. So if anybody decides that you really have a passion for training, please let me know. It is, for what it's worth, an easier lift than it sounds. We have some solid training materials that we use year after year. And thank you all for volunteering to serve on that committee and to act as trainers. What about Mark?
Victoria,
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
just said I wanted to be on the committee, but I don't know if that also means training, but I will do both of those things. I don't know if I need to say that separately or not. After they started saying training, I was like, oh, I might have said that wrong. I'll do both things. But I
appreciate
can't
you.
chair, but I
Okay.
can absolutely train.
I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much, Sarah. And for anybody who doesn't know, Sarah Kane with Catholic Charities also works on the Hillsborough pit, which happens every February. So Sarah is doing double pit right now.
Yeah, that's why I can't do any chairs of anything. I'm the co-chair on Hillsborough too. So I promise I volunteer for the things, friends, but not those. I got no conflict of interest type nonsense. But I'll be there.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate you.
Sure.
What about marketing? So here you're responsible for flyers, for volunteer recruitment letters, for social media graphics, and all kinds of fun stuff like that.
Hey, Victoria. So I'm happy to be a part of the committee, but I just started a new role at my job and I don't want to spread myself too thin. So I'll be a part of it and I'll help whoever wants to chair it. It's super fun, so somebody definitely should.
Not gonna lie, Sam, I was getting excited. I thought you were coming off mute to volunteer to.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. For what it's worth, to whoever does chair this subcommittee this year, you have a great team member in Sam. She has done so many of the social media graphics and flyers and things like that for this event over the last couple of years. So there's great material and a great team there.
And I think Reagan is still out on maternity leave, so she may be willing to re-engage with that. I think she comes back in a couple more weeks.
Excellent. Excellent. I'll reach out to her when she comes back unless anybody else would like to step in. But hearing and seeing no nominations for right now, let's move on to our youth outreach subcommittee, who will be responsible for really focusing on deployment and marketing for youth. And that means folks under the age of 24. Do we have any nominations for chair of the youth outreach subcommittee?
I don't want to be chair, but I'll be part of the committee.
Thank you, Dama.
I would also like to be part of that committee. I've never chaired before, so I need to know what I'm doing before I can, maybe next year.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Megan. I appreciate it.
Well, I would nominate Megan as vice chair. Why wait till next year to learn?
I would accept that as I would accept that.
Thank you. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second that.
Thank you, Arrow. All right, all those in favor of Megan Jetter serving as the Youth Outreach Subcommittee Vice Chair, please say aye or put aye in the chat or say nothing.
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed say nay or put nay in the chat. Hearing and seeing no nays, congratulations, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you very much for your service. All right, so do we have a nomination for Youth Outreach Subcommittee Chair? All right. Hearing and seeing none, we can put that on the list of other ones that we will work on figuring out in subcommittees. I will share a link for everybody to indicate which subcommittee you want to be a part of. If you've already said that here as well, wonderful. Thank you very much. But I got to update it because it currently says Youth Pit and I want to change that to Youth Outreach. And I'll send that out and then I will make sure that our chairs and vice chairs get that contact information for everybody who wants to be a part of that subcommittee. If there's no chair or vice chair, my team, HLE team, will go ahead and will manage that reach out and scheduling that first meeting. And like Dominique and Arrow suggested, we can figure out subcommittee leadership from there. So thank you all very, very much. And remember, if you want to serve as a chair for a subcommittee but didn't volunteer here, you can always volunteer later. Feel free to message me. All right. So now we're getting into 2025. Let's talk about this year's work. So tentatively, we are scheduled for Thursday, January 30th from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have historically done PIT on the last Thursday in June, or sorry, last Thursday in January. June would be a weird one. So last Thursday in January from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. However, HUD allows you to do PIT anytime during the last 10 days in January, unless you have a specific exception like Hillsborough does because of Gasparilla, they get to do theirs in February. But otherwise, all across the country, last 10 days in January. So previously in the 2024 committee, we had talked about changing our PIT date or changing how we operate PIT. We had discussed taking this from a single all-day event to a couple of half-days events, to offering more drop-in sites like the Florida Dream Center does in Lealman. And maybe even splitting, we were talked about doing a youth PIT event, maybe splitting youth PIT and doing that on a Saturday and regular PIT on a Thursday. All of these kind of things were talked about in previous meetings with the prior committees. So I want to bring that here to this group and get some feedback. We've decided we're not going to do a separate youth PIT event. We are going to roll that in. So decide how that looks a little bit in detail. But do we want to confirm January 30th as a one-day, all-day event and we can plan drop-in sites and surveys? Or do we want to extend PIT so that it takes place over more than one day? Please keep in mind, if we do PIT on more than one day, we are always asking about the same night. So when we go out and we do surveys, we ask where people slept last night. If I do a survey today, I will ask where people slept last night. So that means Monday night into Tuesday morning. If I go out and I do a PIT survey tomorrow, I will still be asking where people slept Monday night into Tuesday morning. So the further away from the original survey date you get, the harder it might be to get accurate data from people. So I don't recommend doing PIT for the entirety of those 10 days because I don't know about y'all, but I have a hard time remembering 10 days ago unless I'm specifically writing things down. So all of that being said, Arrow has her hand up. I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let discussion begin. Arrow?
Hello. So yeah, this is a weird January too, because we actually have 5 Thursdays. So I'm seeing if I can reserve the date in our room here for the 30th, because I had it as the 4th Thursday of the month. So that was good clarification on that. My concern with doing all like drop-in sites and things like that is that if we want data truly on like where people are throughout the county, we lose that when we bring them to certain areas. Where we already have that, like with the shelters, obviously we're getting that shelter count. But then also I think we do have a growing number of people that are declining to fill out surveys, that are just saying no. So I don't know how we draw them back into wanting to be part of it.
What I would say that we not do the 30th, because that's a lot of people could be off that day. They could not be here on Saturday, right? Oh wait, it's January, the end of January. I was thinking the end of December. I'm like, why are we doing this on New Year's Eve? Never mind. Never mind.
You're good, Dama. I was wondering what holiday I'd missed on the 30th. No worries. So Dominique has asked in the chat, for anyone that has done PIT in other communities, how has that been their schedules? I've heard some communities doing an early morning only, some doing early and late. Does anybody have experience with that you want to share?
So, oh, Arrow, did you want to say something? I saw your hand was still up. No, okay. So I know when I was in the Orlando area, we did tri-county, so we would do both. We would do some in the morning and then some in the afternoon, because we knew that sometimes we would go there in the morning and people were just kind of away from their campsite or like their tents or their campsites. So we would do both in the early morning and then leave sometime in the middle and then have a second group coming in for the afternoon, probably only until 7 or 8-ish because then it gets dark. But that usually would work for us.
Thank you, Daisy, for sharing that Orange County experience. Sarah?
Hey, Victoria. In Hillsborough, we do 2 shifts. So there's a really early morning. I think we start at 7 to noon, and then 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. Yeah. And then youth is a separate event. So it's over 2 days technically. And the youth event is a few hours, and typically like now Hillsborough has moved to involving the Youth Action Board, and a lot more of a focus on our youth who are experiencing homelessness in the county. So it's become like an all-day event, food trucks and vendors, and we've gotten some barbers and beauticians to come out for free haircuts, like all the kind of resources that speak to that age group and their needs specifically on the streets. So that's what it looks like in Hillsborough every year in February, because like you said, we have Gasparilla in January. So HUD special, what is that word? We get a special dispensation from HUD.
And I think Hillsborough, you guys also have the youth grant, right? That was recently awarded.
Well, yeah, HUD handed it out to the COC, but it hasn't been handed out down to the YHDP money. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that did just come down. But even previous to that, there's already unaccompanied youth dollars in the county and that youth pit. So this year we're kind of looking forward to it changing even a little more with YAB included, and with some of those young voices on the board and with that lived experience. Because really, if you don't ask clients what they need, you will never find out. We're living very different lives than they are. So that's what it looks like thus far. This year, I think we'll see some more changes too. And those are separated committees too. They no longer work together. Well, they work together, but there's a whole committee for Youth Action Board, and the youth committee, good Lord, sorry. The youth pit count. Words are hard even on Tuesday. Apparently my Monday has a hangover. So that's what it looks like there. And I will say it's kind of a catch-22 in the separation thing, because you do have there's more of a struggle to get volunteers to commit. Like once you've done a full day of, 10 hours on the street, 2 shifts, you can struggle with that. So if that's something you want to do, the volunteer committee should really look at getting like 2 separate pools of volunteers for those things, which can be difficult. But that's typically the struggle, is like once they're done with the first full day, they're like, all right, good talk, I'll see you next year. And so that can be a struggle with that, which I don't know how much we've struggled, I guess, with maintaining and continuing to keep the same kind of volunteers, but we don't want to see burnout either.
Great points, Sarah. Thank you very much for sharing that Hillsborough perspective. Arrow?
I'm wondering, do we have on that 30th at least a knowledge of what other homeless related services are typically out and about that same day? Like, for example, I know originally Thursday was picked because, or the last Thursday was picked because it was like, it used to be like a big feeding day at one of the parks, I think in St. Pete or something. But just thinking about like the days the mobile medical units out, or are there other events that maybe we could at least just pick the day that coincides where people would be more likely to come anyway?
That's a great question. I think Dama can attest to the fact that there was definitely a big feeding, a big meal site in Williams Park last year, this last January. But I don't know. I would have to go and do a little bit of research to see what kind of events take place on that day versus maybe the day after or the day before. I think that is a really interesting question, and it's something that we would just want to do a little bit of research into so that we're not guessing.
I have a question. How does the mobile medical unit, how do they factor into the PID? Do they coordinate with us or coordinate and there's like in one spot, or do they move around throughout that day? How does that work?
The mobile med, or excuse me, street medicine operates as they normally would. They are equipped to do the surveys, but they are doing their normal kind of schedule. Something we talked about last year is also having people in their normal roles, like the librarian at the library doing surveys at the library rather than being deployed. So I'm hoping that we can also enhance that as well.
Right, so I was going to say, I have 2 case managers. One is attached to the mobile medical, and I have one that's street medicine that are from directions that are already attached to that. So I would like to be able to make sure we make the best use of it.
Do we have any idea about how many duplicates we had last year?
Oh, I would have to pull that information. HMIS, do you happen to know that off the top of your head? And if not, we can find out the answer.
No, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can find out.
I think that's a great question though, because especially if we can look at the hours, like was the 1 to 4 70% repeats? You know what I'm saying? Like why? Because that one normally does get a lot quieter. So like, do we need to be out from 1 to 4? I don't know. And I think some of the survey data could lean us into that direction to say the bulk of these, because there were, I think the number that was presented on Friday, there were probably 3 times as many of those surveys completed, at least double on the day of. So there's definitely some duplication or incomplete surveys that were filtered out.
Right, so then you could even look at like during those timeframes, how many surveys were actually collected, like that 1 to 4 timeframe or whatever, and see, as opposed to like the other morning.
I believe so. Tony, they're time stamped, right?
Correct. Everything is timestamped. So we could look at times. I would just need to know exactly what it is that we want to report here. Are we just looking at duplicates, or are we looking at surveys that didn't get through for whatever reason, whether they be, during this period of time, in this period of time, we had this many surveys thrown out? Are we just looking at how many times people have actually answered the survey more than once?
I think answering the survey more than once would get directly to what we're wanting to get at. Other data can be helpful, but I think duplicates who administered it, like whether it was law enforcement or a civilian, and location.
I don't know if I'll be able to separate out whether it was law enforcement or what. I might be able to get something like that. Victoria, do you happen to have a list of who the volunteers were for law enforcement so that I
Well,
could separate them
the
out?
survey, if you remember, the survey zone was Leo, so you should be able to filter that out.
Yeah, and
Like
we
there was
can,
S4, S5, and there was a Leo one.
I
All right,
think
so
the
we want to know
time,
who actually conducted the survey. We want to know what their duplicate, what time it was, and then what zone they were in.
Yes.
awesome. Thank you very much, Tony, for pulling that. And then, Madam Chair, did you have something you wanted to say? It sounded like you might have, and I wanted to make sure you had a chance to, so.
I think Helen was actually trying to say something.
Sorry, Helen?
and I am not the chair.
I will gladly take that compliment, though. I'm Helen.
Oh, that is Dominique. No, Tony answered it when he said the time, because I think the time is important will be important for the deployment committee, just to determine, like you were saying, Dominique, if we need people within that time frame, that 1 to 4 time frame. But he's already going to add that to it. So I think that'll help when we look at duplicates.
Awesome. So it sounds like to me, we are really looking at a single event, but reevaluating our times that we do this single day.
Sorry, but can we also add, just Tony, while you're doing that, not to that report, but maybe just a separate report of how many surveys were thrown out that were not duplicates? I think it would be helpful to know.
Good request.
All right, so we want, if we're going to do the ones that we threw out completely that were not duplicates, would we also want to do times, who did it, whether it was LEO or not, the zone that they were in? We want all the same information, but we want one part that's going to be duplicates and then one part which is going to be surveys thrown out for whatever reason.
Yes. Okay. I'm hoping that that's not a lot.
Thank you, Dama. And that is good data to have. It's really important to know how many surveys are not being answered sufficiently, so that they are counted towards our data, because that will be an important part of training, making sure that volunteers know if somebody does not answer X, Y, or Z question, we cannot consider their survey. So that's a great request. Thank you, Dama. And thank you, Tony, for working on that.
The one thing I didn't have on here, I don't have why. Do you want why they were thrown out as far as the data, or just that they were thrown out because, data was incomplete or what have you?
I mean, if you could provide that, I mean, if it's easy to do, I mean, the more you could drill it down, the better.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a filter that allows, like, thrown out because it was a duplicate, thrown out because it was incomplete, then yeah, but I think what you can work with the data you currently have. I don't think you need a deep dive. Like a filter, it's not a deeper dive, if that makes sense.
Okay. Understood.
Thank you all for clarifying. I really appreciate that. So I think that what we'll do for our specific pit date is we will do a little bit of research, the HLE will, on what's going on in the community in the days surrounding that tentative January 30th date. And then we will bring it back to the group to decide if we want to keep that tentative January 30th date, or if we want to look at one of the neighboring days. And then we will look at the data that Tony is going to pull from last year's pit to evaluate our times. So I think that is a really solid plan. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns before we move forward from there?
I just wanted to say that every year, and I think Teresa before me had asked that we change the date from a Thursday because our city council members really want to participate. However, they can't on Thursdays. And yet, with it being a fifth Thursday, this might make the difference. for them. I obviously don't have a schedule for their dates next year yet, but this might make the difference. And so if that leans us any more towards sticking with this date, then that would be great.
Excellent. Thank you, Helen. That is very funny. I gotta say. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any other notes, questions, comments, concerns before we move forward with our last couple minutes? All right, if you do have any, please feel free to send them to me. We will get further into our goals for the 2025 PIT in future, but just real quick, last year we increased the number of volunteers by 7.5%. It was, I think, 7% the year before and 7.5% last year. This year, I would love if we could beat that, maybe a little bit closer to 10% even. So I'm hoping that we can deploy at least 400 volunteers at our minimum. But again, last year we had 396 scheduled, so that should be easy. And then let's look for an opportunity to bring in new partners like we've already talked about here in this chat, school counselors and, you know, other folks that might be really valuable to this process. Also, we want to increase that survey coverage, which we can only do if we have more volunteers, to make sure that we have better data. The better data we have, the better we can serve the community. Enhance the youth PIT. What does that mean now? Well, that means figuring out how we're going to market PIT events to ensure that youth really participate. Improve our training process. We've been working on this one year after year. And let's go ahead and keep that ball rolling. I know last year I was a pretty fast talker during that training video. So let's improve these things, make them a little bit better. And then of course, increasing community awareness, which our marketing team will be in charge of. And then here's our timeline. This timeline, and actually more detailed timeline, is included in the packet. So please don't worry that we don't have a lot of time to go over this here right now. But here's a vague outline. So this month, we are starting to join our subcommittees. Next month, subcommittees will start meeting. And then I would really like to start volunteer recruitment on October 1st. Dominique?
Oh, sorry, I wait for after the timeline. Sorry.
You're good. You're good. Helen?
Go to the next one.
Okay.
I thought you were done.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay. Here's the next one.
No, I thought you were done. So
okay.
Let's finish the timeline.
Okay. Okay. So then for timeline in December, we will finish our surveys so that we can send them to the city of St. Pete, who so generously prints them every year. And we don't want to send them in January. We want to give their team time. We will finish those deployment zones. We will start volunteer training registration. We'll do some beta testing on our surveys, and we can cross out Youth PIT finalized since we're not going to do a separate event this year. And then in January, volunteer training, final event schedule will be presented at our last meeting in January, or at our January meeting. And of course, volunteer training, supply batching, volunteer schedules, and then our PIT event will be sometime in the last 10 days in January. TBD. And then of course, we will send a follow-up email to volunteers after PIT. And then February, we'll do a debrief meeting. April, HLA will submit the data to HUD. And then summer 2025, the PIT report will be available. And that's what I got. Helen.
Go ahead, Dominique. I'll let you gotta let the chair go first.
All right, Madam Chair.
No. So I did have a question, and I don't know how us as a committee and with this event in general, with the legislation coming out. Is that what Helen was going to say? There we go, Helen. See, for example, I was thinking, we need to secure our law enforcement trainer, and that, that training that would be going out. However, with legislation changing, if there's any feedback that HUD is giving to the state of Florida as a whole, as it relates to this counting on homeless in our community that are unsheltered with our state legislation that is coming through. I just want us to be really aware of that. And if there's something that we can kind of reach out for TA, and maybe we are not able to use law enforcement, and not that I do love and respect you guys with law enforcement. I know some of you are, like Hancock, I saw you on here. I don't know if anyone else is, but I think that's something that we need to be very aware of this year as part of this committee.
So I just wanted to comment on that. I have not heard anything coming down in regards to that, but I could definitely reach out to HUD to see if there's any type of suggestions or how we can work with law enforcement or not work with law enforcement. I can reach out to them and I can get back to Victoria, and then we can send it out to the committee.
Daisy, we also have the task team this week too. So maybe we could bring it up in there, see if, because we've got some law enforcement folks, I think, on that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for bringing up that very important point, Madam Chair. And I think, Helen, I think that's what you were
That's
also
exactly what I was going to say. Like,
okay.
We're going to do the pit. However, we know that that will have changed. And what does that look like for our unhoused neighbors? And if I were unhoused, I would not be having a conversation with anyone telling them where I slept last night, especially law enforcement. So if we could get some direction, that would be great. And then I would ask also, how many paper surveys did we do last year? We've every year kind of said, oh, we just want to go to electronic, and I recognize that everybody doesn't have access to a phone, because I handed my phone over to one of the team members that was with me last year because hers just wasn't working. However, if we are training in that way, then do we just use it? Do we need to print paper surveys? Like, I'm really not sure. So I would just ask us to think about that as well.
Certainly appreciate that. And I personally want to use as little paper as possible. So I'm with you there. And I think that is definitely something we should consider, and we can maybe put on the agenda for action next meeting and decide how we want to proceed with that. Thank you very much, Helen.
As we look for that, Errol just made me, her note just made me think, oh, that might be something to think about with our youth outreach and engagement, because they're certainly not going to have that conversation about where they were. So that's another thing for us to think about, you know, as we're distributing certain flyers that say, hey, you know, there's this new anti-camping law, and we're also trying to engage our youth.
Yeah. Excellent points. Thank you all very, very much.
It may just be a little bit more to like explaining when you're, you know, asking that question, that they don't have to give the specific location, but more like, you know what I'm saying, like vaguer categories, but not saying like such and such a park or whatever.
Thank you very much. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns for today? All right, let's keep this conversation going. Please feel free to continue talking offline. These are really valuable conversations, and I want to make sure we have a successful event. So thank you all very much. And Madam Chair, would you like to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, adjourn the meeting. Good thing I stayed on, you guys. You'd still be here till next month. All right, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you have a wonderful day, and stay dry.
Thank you
Bye,
all.
everyone. Thanks,
Bye.
Dominique. Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.
Bye all. Have a great day.